Well, the alarming state of insecurity in Nigeria is not just threatening the growth of the country, but may plunge the country into famine if not checked. The worsening insecurity situation has triggered inflationary pressure on food prices and worsening the poverty conditions in the country. Currently, food inflation is at 22% and will likely go higher. Is there a way out of this situation? Let's have this conversation with the Chief Executive Officer, Best Food Global Limited, Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere. Thank you very much, Mr. Ijewere, for joining us on the program. Good morning and happy Workers' Day to you.
Happy Workers' Day to you, my dear brother sister. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, we're celebrating Workers' Day, and of course, everybody in different sectors, including the agri sector where you are also workers. Now, how worried are you about the insecurity situation in Nigeria and the impact on the agri sector where you operate?
Very worried indeed. Very worried, particularly because Nigeria had food security problems before COVID. Nigeria had food security problems before this heightened level of insecurity in the country. And Nigeria also had food security problems before the situation in the Sahel worsened in terms of their own insecurity, as well as the low rainfall they suffered last year. So the situation is this, that this is the planting season. The next 3 months are so crucial to Nigeria if we are not going to have a huge shortage of food in the country, because this is the planting season when we should be preparing for harvesting in late August, September, and November. It has also been further complicated by the level of export of Nigerian food, especially in northern area of the country, to other parts of of Africa, because they have a lot of challenges, and our exchange rate has encouraged a number of our own farmers and aggregators to be encouraged to export food out there. Now, what is also happening is the worrisome situation that's further developing in eastern part of the country. We have gotten used to the northeast of the country over this period, and they are beginning to come back. So the price of beans came down slightly, but the price of maize, which is required for many other things, including the poultry industry, is rising on daily basis. Soya is difficult to get because of the instability and insecurity. Farmers are afraid to go to the farms. And I'm worried about this. Unless something is done within the next 2 to 3 months, we will have very, very, very dire consequences.
All right, Mr. Ijewere, the growth rates of the agri sector in the fourth quarter of 2020 was about 2.58%, while the economy as a whole only managed to a marginal growth rate of about 0.11%. Could you explain how it's possible to achieve this level of growth in the agri sector, in the midst of insecurity, especially in the food production basket of the Middle Belt, coupled with the pandemic?
I will be granular in explaining that. For example, today is Workers' Day. We are on holidays, but we farmers have no holiday today, so we work 24/7. Now, especially in that season, the other reason is the fact that farmers, in their own small ways, are small capitalists who must go to work, who must work hard to ensure that they feed their families. Because many of our farmers are small people, but aggregating all of them, you will see the growth they are having. So against all odds, they keep on working. That's the reason why we have this growth. But however, they also have challenges, because the 2.6% is not something that was projected about 10 years ago. We should be having about 6 or 7% growth in the agricultural space. But we have not been able to, because all the inputs are supposed to go in. For example, let's take tomato. Only 1.5% of farmers today use improved seedling. Whereas if they had used improved seedling, their yield will go up at least 5-fold. There are so many things that need to be done while we know that government after government keeps on saying that agriculture is the way to go, but nothing is actually happening there. Nobody is really listening to it. So I think that the sooner we start looking at agriculture and seeing agricultural produce as national wealth, rather than just seeing oil as the only national wealth, it will continue to face this kind of situation. So the reason, the 2.6 you mentioned, for you may look good compared to the Nigerian global growth rate or GDP. But for us in the agricultural sector who are to some extent enlightened, are very unhappy about the level we are as of today, given the kind of God-sent opportunities we have in terms of the arable land we have, space, water, all those things, and weather. And we have good, hard-working farmers. This have not been able to be translated because the partnership with government has not really worked.
Now, you sounded a note of warning that if nothing is done about the insecurity situation in the country in the next 3 months, that we'll probably not have enough food in the country. Now, Nigeria claims to have a strategic grain reserve. What is the total level of storage, and is it enough to last, for the next year or two?
You will recall that last year during the COVID, the president announced that they were going to release, I think, 300,000 tons.
300,000, yes, of maize.
Yes, 30 tons of maize. That has been released. It's not like now you have released it, you now have to go back and start planting. So the strategic reserve, as far as maize is concerned, for example, is grossly depleted as of today. On top of that is the fact that we need to have reserves in a number of foodstuffs. I was very impressed last week when Lagos state government came up with a roadmap, because Lagos is the biggest consumer, and I think they are reacting very well. I'm very happy that at least states like Lagos are doing something about it, but they have a challenge. They don't have the land to do it. So they now have to partner with other states to be able to do it. Then you now have the challenge of preservation. How many warehouses do we have? We now have commodity exchanges. Commodity exchanges cannot really boom unless you have warehouses and so on. So we have challenges about storage. What we managed to have at that time is all gone. So we do not have any strategic reserve as of today. That is the situation we are facing today. And strategic reserves are better maintained by the private sector, who will run it, and government will ensure that they aggregate this for the security of the country.
All right, some analysts say approximately 40% of food commodities in Nigeria are destroyed because of poor storage, and the distance between the growing belt and the high manufacturing hub. A survey also shows that investors are wary of investing in the raw material belt because of insecurity and crumbling road infrastructure. What do you suggest as a way out of this investment conundrum?
I would say to first start with, for the 40% that is estimated as the food wastage is understated. I would categorically say certainly above 40%, but somewhere around 50–52% of all the food that God has given us are destroyed by our own carelessness as human beings. So I'll put that there. Now, what do we need to do? Like I said, there has to be many of our farmers who are the primary producers don't have that level of education, don't have access to funding and so on and so forth. More enlightened people need to come in. And we are looking at situations where people can come in the value chain. The banks need to be convinced. And what has happened is that the central bank has been doing all it can to handhold commercial banks to come into agriculture. But they are still very reluctant. They want to be given and well spoon-fed for them to even look at agriculture. So in other words, unless these superstructures like banks, who are the financial institutions, start taking agriculture as the future of this country, we will never make progress. These are the issues. You see, we talk about the strategic reserve. You plant, you have all this, the farmers harvest all this, they never end up on your table for consumption. They get lost either in the farm because there's no transportation, or in the local market in the village because there's no preservation, or on the roads because the roads are so bad, or because there is no warehouse. Even in every market you have wastages. These are issues that need to be addressed in a holistic manner. So we need, Let's take the Ministry of Agriculture, for example. What seriousness do we have in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, where we have one minister or two ministers, both of them there? Whereas in actual fact, if agriculture is so important to us, we should have one for animal husbandry, we should have one for grains, we should have one for fishery. It's so important. The future of Nigeria is dependent on agriculture, not on oil. We keep telling ourselves this, but we still go into one ear and comes out of the other. It's a very sad situation.
Sad situation indeed. So how much linkages do we have between agriculture and industry?
Right now, our industry cannot really grow because they cannot continue to import their raw materials. The foreign exchange is not there, and some of them are built on the basis of local production. And our local production is not doing well because you need to process what you are selling. Even our exports, as of today, what Nigeria is the biggest producer of cassava in the world. We produce about 40% of the world's cassava. Our export of cassava product is zero. Indonesia, that produces only about, I think, 11 or 12% of all cassava, 80% of the world cassava export is from there. We are unable to add value to our cassava because we don't have the industries. You go to any bank and sit down with them and say, look, I have this project and it's coming from this country and that. The next thing they will ask you is, where is your collateral? And your collateral must be from Ikoyi, Victoria Island, Maitama, or places like that. Those are things that we have not been able to bring together. We've held conferences and conferences. Nigeria is now suffering from over-conferencing. So we know what the problems are. It's a question of the decision of various governments. I was happy that Lagos State made the move they made, coming with a roadmap, bringing the private sector together and say, what is your problem? Tell us what your problems are. Let us see how we can play a role to mitigate it. So every state government, because agriculture is in local governments and states, they are not in the Independence Square in Abuja. They are in the villages. So let the state governments and the local governments, well, of course, in many states, local governments are just on paper. So these are issues that need to be discussed. Go to a local government and ask them, how many of your farmers produce yam? Many of them don't even know any of their farmers. So we need to go back to the grassroots. For us to be successful in agriculture, we need to be granular as a nation.
All right, so there's a wide gap between the productivity of many commodities and crops, animals, milk, etc. In Nigeria and the developed nations, how can Nigeria bridge this gap? And what else can be done towards this all-important goal?
The first thing is that we recognize the fact that we have hard-working farmers. Next is for the various governments at various levels to sit down with them as partners of economic progress, to say, what are your problems? How do we work together? As long as you don't do that, everybody is working in a silo, and those silos are so many that become an obstruction to each other. So what we need to do, they bring in a lot of more educated people into it, and those who hold the reins of economic power in Nigeria, like the financial power, need to come in to assist. They don't have to be farmers, but they can invest in allowing more production, either semi-processing or full processing of these. When we export any of our produce, we are only getting less than 10% of the value. Those countries that process them get about 80% or 90% of the value. These are the issues that we need to, first of all, understand. Okay. We need to believe in ourselves, believe in our future, believe in agriculture, knowing that that's the way forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ijawere, for sharing your thoughts with us. This Workers' Day, we do appreciate your time. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day. And try to rest and keep safe.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take a break, and when we come back, of course, we'll revisit the issue of the Workers' Day, looking at labor productivity and, of course, the economy. Just stay with us.